So I'd like to begin the meeting by reading the Indigenous Solidarity Statement. So we'd like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganyan-Gehaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. That being said, I will pass the floor to Isaiah for just a quick announcement about the room.
Okay, so let me just turn off this blue screen since we don't have a cord. Did that work? Okay, I'll fix that in a minute. Okay guys, so we are in the lovely JMSB conference room for our meetings for the rest of the year, except for the October, from what I'm here, because maybe of a conflict of booking.
We can get the smaller one.
We can get the smaller one. However, I need everyone to take this relatively seriously, because in the past years, CSU hasn't necessarily had the best relationships with booking space for our meetings. Some faculties were terrified to even not even want us anywhere near the rooms.
Literally.
So it's like they were like, nope. So that be in mind, when we have food or we have whatever, there cannot be a speck of garbage left anywhere. The chairs have to be tucked in neatly, or else they're just gonna be like, nope, we're going back to a hall building classroom. It'd be your own representatives. And then we will not have the luxury of these nice rooms and the comfy seating. We want to try to change the brand of council for this year, make sure that we're taken more seriously and the room we in represent us. So hopefully we'll have nice rooms like this for the rest of the semester. And with that, we're going to just jump right into this special meeting. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Isaiah. Okay, so with that we can get into the agenda, starting with the coordinator updates. And Chris, the floor is yours.
You got me at the worst time.
Good play.
Sorry.
All right. So as you saw, I submitted a mini report. These are probably the largest things going on right now with me. But of course, there's some other things I'm going to talk about that aren't in the report. So first of all, I've been involved with a lot of meetings about the agenda, about the annual campaign, as well as orientation. And what's really cool is this kind of happened organically. We decided that the agenda, the campaign, and the orientation would all have a common vision of sustainability. So rather than just doing everything as a one-off, there's a common vision that binds them all together. So the agenda is going to be a sustainable agenda. The campaign, as we picked last council meeting, was a sustainability campaign, and orientation is going to have some cool guest speakers who have to do with sustainability. We're going to do a panel actually at the campaign launch. So I've been sitting in all of those meetings. Concerning the, so another thing is I'm chair of the appointments committee. Basically, I looked at the descriptions for the job positions from last year. They're not from last year specifically, they're from the past, they've been carried over. And what we realized is that the person writing the description probably didn't know the details of the job. And I mean, I know as a student applying, if I don't feel like I understand what I'm applying to, I'm less likely to do that. So I ran around and I spoke to Andrew Woodall, I spoke to Lisa Ostegi, I even briefly mentioned this to the new president of Concordia, Graham Carr, and to Anne Whitelaw, who's going to be the interim provo. I spoke to all of them to try and learn what all these different positions exactly do. And this includes, I'll open up the positions. So it includes the student tribunal pool, which Patrick and I had to open up lots of documents to learn what it does, exactly what your powers are, what you're going to get out of the experience. And that was primarily what we spoke to the administration about. What are you going to get out of this experience? What do students learn? And we learned that they get a lot of legal experience because they're working alongside legal professionals. The Concordia Council on Student Life, this one was a bit simpler, and Eduardo helped me out a bit on that one. CSU committees, pretty simple, although it took us some time to get shortening out, before it was all jargon from the standing regulations. The average student looks at that and goes, what the heck's going on? What is this? What is that? It took some time to get it into as few words as possible and to also make it not just buzzwords, to make it actually meaningful. The Concordia Senate, that one was pretty simple, but we still wanted to learn more. How many members do we have? How many members are there in total? That took some quick website research. We also came up with this cool paragraph that says the ideal candidate is a powerful speaker. However, we will consider applicants who are serious about overcoming anxieties and developing their public speaking abilities. What's nice about that is it encourages students who want to get out of their comfort zone but aren't there yet to kind of apply. So little things like this, different people on the team contributing. We have the call out for the Board of Governors, the call out for a position on the University Examinations Committee, which is if you're in a situation where you need to defer an exam. Let's say, I don't know, you find out you have cancer during the exam period, this is where you would go to get that exception. The University Retroactive Withdrawal Committee, which is, let's say you find out something terrible is happening to you and you want to get out of a class late and get your money back, that's where you would go. And finally, the Judicial Board, where I had to have a meeting with the chair of the Judicial Board because they're hard to reach. Alex Barcelona, the ex-chair, he just resigned, and he told me about where they are, how last year went, their situation, how many people are going to be resigning, which looks like it's going to be about 3 to 5 by the end of the summer, which means we need to get on appointing the rest of it. So that took quite some time. That was like a few hours every day, and it adds up. Yeah, so that's that on that. Next we have some meetings that I had with the administration. There was a meeting with Roger Cote and Alex Aragona with Patrick Quinn. And this meeting was about how we can integrate online voting with My Concordia. So last year we decided we don't want to use the university admin system for online voting because we're like, oh, well, what if they want to tamper with our elections? We already put 50K into security or whatever it was, 30K, 50K. Let's not jump too fast to giving the admin a total control of our elections and put all our faith in them. Let's keep it separate. Great idea, but also makes it hard to log in. So what we want to do is have an authentication system, which means you use your My Concordia login to get into online voting, but then after you're logged in, Concordia plays no part in the process. So it's looking like that's our best option. It makes things simple while balancing security. We had a meeting with the presidents, Graham Carr and Ann Whitelaw, and mainly we spoke about, well, the main things we spoke about were the bathrooms and fall reading week. Patrick and I keep on going to these meetings, we keep on going bathrooms, and they keep on going, yeah, don't worry, we're taking care of it. But it's very important that we keep on showing up and reminding them because if any of you have an experience in a bureaucracy, things move slow and you got to keep on insistently pushing for things to get done. But what's nice is they do seem to have some long-term plans. They do want to renovate all the bathrooms in the hall building. The plan is written down, it's happening. For fall reading week, they're on board in spirit. It's just they're halting things for the whole keeping everybody happy part of the process, which is going to slow things down, but we're there to push it. Isaiah's sitting on that committee, and I think he's doing a great job pushing for online voting, pushing for fall reading week to happen as fast as possible. Another really cool thing is Ann Whitelaw said she'd be willing to give us advertising space for free in the tunnel for our elections. So if you ever see that huge banner, having it there, I think that would help increase turnout. We've been spending a lot of time forging a relationship with CUPE. CUPE is the union for the employees at the CSU. So why do we have CUPE? It's to make sure that we don't just come into the office, fire everyone, and fill it with our friends. That's how Robert described it to us. It was created about 3-4 years ago, and
No, that's 20 years ago, dude.
20 years ago?
It's like, it's
Oh, CUPE, but our chapter of CUPE and our collective agreement, I think, is recent. No?
No, it's been 15.
Okay, so I'm wrong on that. But, yeah. Basically, we have an employees union, and their purpose is to make sure that employees are respected. Last year, we were told that, not even last year, just in general, it hasn't been practiced to keep communication open with the employees union. So we're doing a really strong effort to meet with them regularly and to make sure they're left in the loop on everything that we do. There's the Mindfulness Project. They came to the CSU last year, and the year before it asked for funding. Before that, they were an initiative of CUPA, which is the Concordia Undergraduate Psychology Association, and they want to work on building a stronger relationship with us. They've even discussed becoming a full-on service, so we're talking with them to see how that could happen. We've had 2 meetings, and if it goes anywhere, it's going to come to council next. The judicial board meeting's already in there, but basically we know that there's vacancies and they need to be filled. They can be filled by council, they can be filled by appointments committee, that will be up to council.
But it's really like.
It can be delegated. Yeah, that's what we did last year. We realized it just takes too much time. So we're like, let's just put it in an appointments committee. Another thing appointments committee could do is filter out applicants. It's all up to council. Or council could just do it itself. Not an issue either. And then the last thing that we spent a lot of time with is our health plan. So there's 2 aspects to this. There's the health plan that we already offer, which is offered by Student Care called ASEC in Quebec. We went to their headquarters twice to talk about how we want to move forward, on what changes we want to make. And then the second part of it is the international plan. We have told the Concordia administration, as we were mandated by the last referendum, that we want to move international students from the Concordia University plan, which is handled through Blue Cross, to our plan, which would be offered by Student Care. And the reason we want to do this is because we believe we will save students money. And also, it's just in our interest to do a better job than it is for the Concordia administration. It just makes sense. And then besides that, I've just been overseeing every executive, their projects, keeping up to date and also offering whatever advice I can. One thing that's really happening right now, and Eduardo will be talking about this, is orientation is taking a lot of time. We wanted to create an event that would be a collaboration between all 4 faculty associations, but unfortunately, two of them, CASA and ASFA, and ECA are going separate ways and doing their own events. And it looks like there's pretty much nothing we could do to keep them together. We've tried everything, and they're both very headstrong about doing their own events their own way. Yeah?
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, like, just a bit why CASA had said they didn't want to work with you and why ASFA is, like, wasn't. Like, I just want a clarification as to why they wouldn't, if all the other associations were working, like, why wasn't?
Yeah.
Can I answer that during my part? Then I go over.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, just make sure it's answered.
You don't want to not work with us.
It's not
Okay.
us, it's with each other.
Particularly the last collab event.
Yeah, I'll go over that during my part.
Cool. And that's about it. If you have any questions, the floor is open.
Yes, Maha?
Back on something that you said earlier. I know that you guys have been pushing for the admin for bathrooms, and that's great that they're going to do renos, but it's not the renos, it's the maintenance and the lack of it actually that was the issue here. So have they said anything about that instead of just like, oh, we'll do it?
Yeah, so it's a lot more complicated than how I made it out to be in the report. But basically, we have been talking about the 2 fronts of both maintenance and renovation. So they do have plans for renovation, and they're starting pretty quick. Like by fall, bathrooms will start to get gutted, and like the whole process of renovating them will begin. It's kind of an issue though, because when they're doing these massive renovations, it's not as much an incentive to keep up maintenance, because they're like, well, it's all going to be blown up anyway. But we have been bringing it up. One thing that Patrick and I have been pushing for is for them to put up signs, and I don't know how long most people have been at Concordia, but I've been here for 4 years, and 4 years ago, at the Faubourg building, there were these signs that said, if there's an issue in the bathroom, call this number. So we've been pushing for them to put those signs back, so at least that gives students a direct line of communication to facilities management. Another thing that we've been talking about is just like, if they want to up the amount of maintenance workers. We spoke to Alan Shepard about that, and he said, yeah, you could probably push for an increase in the budget in that direction. That's probably an easy victory that you can make. But then we were speaking with Graham Carr and Anne Whitelaw, and they didn't seem as adamant about it. But honestly, I think it's important that you bring that up, and I think it's important that in the following meetings we push hard on that.
Thank you. Is there anything further? Okay, if not, we can move on to Patrick. Oh, sorry, Arad, did you have a question?
I wanted to talk a little bit about the advertising space. It's not so much that I don't want us to have like the free advertising space, but what are we gonna do? Like, because they're giving this space for a reason. They don't usually give stuff for free, and they want to have some sort of influence generally. How are we going to kind of make sure that, maybe it's an open-ended question, but how are we going to kind of make sure that they don't have that sort of influence on us, like that I scratch your back, you scratch mine type of approach.
Yeah, well, I'll take it. Yeah, so I agree. Like these situations, you got to be careful on how you navigate them. However, it's not a very expensive space to begin with. It's about $200 to $400, I believe, for like a week to a month. It's not that much, and we were going to pay it. But they're like, oh, we'll give it to you for free, and we're like, okay. I mean, we're not going to say no, and it's not much leverage over us because if they go, well, do what we say or we'll take it away. I mean, it's like, okay, take it away. It's not really that much leverage. So I think in these situations, you just have to understand how much leverage you're giving the administration and whether or not it's worth it. And I say in this situation, it's not much leverage, so it's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, then Patrick, the floor is yours.
So Chris covered quite a bit in my report, but I guess I'll delve into specific areas where I've just been working on stuff. So there's two main areas that I've been diligently working on. So the first one is I work with Erin, our academic researcher. She's a great person to know. If you have any questions or you want to get to know her, just let me know. Great person. So we've been working on this project quite a bit recently, but we're currently at a roadblock about it. Is about the U-Pass. So it's called the Universal Transit Pass that many universities across Canada have, where they normally pay a fee per semester upfront and they get access to transit. For example, at the University of British Columbia or Simon Fraser, they pay approximately $71 per semester to have access to the, how should I say this? Their SkyTrain service, their bus service, and their C-Bus service, which is a lot for $71 per semester, and it's pretty cool. So we've been going after contracts, we've been going after as much research as possible so that we can have a fully informed report. The deadline, our deadline for this is probably going to be somewhere midway in the fall, but that's hitting a roadblock just because we've been submitting a lot of access to information requests, and if you're dealing with municipal, provincial, and federal governments, those can take between 30 and 60 days usually to get responses, and they don't normally want to deal with that, so that's at a roadblock. So starting up different projects. Right now we're looking into how we can lower the costs for gym services at Concordia, but that's in development at the moment. We'll see where it goes. It's just an interesting thing to do. The second thing that's really been bugging me, and it's something that I brought up at the last June meeting, is our governance review. I had a very hard time tracking all the policies from the previous executive, but just last week I got access to all of them, and I'm happy to say that we're reviewing them right now, and we're going to be informing people as time goes on more and more. So that's just been something that's been very frustrating for me because it's something I really want to work on. I'm happy that we can. And so I'm going to be putting a lot more time and energy into ensuring that our policies are consistent, they make sense, and they're easy to read. And we're not missing policies anymore, because that was one of the issues before. So I did meet with Desiree, Robert, and Chris to talk about the finance policy. I met with Noah, our club's director, and Marin to talk about the club's policy. I'll be talking to the relevant stakeholders for the other ones pretty soon. So Chris mentioned our meeting with Anne Whitelaw and Nadia and Graham. He pretty much covered it. Senate, we're getting into the appointments processes now. We've been getting names back from the different faculty associations for people to interview. And so I'm happy to say that's going along pretty well. I've been also consulting the Senate recordings so that I know much more about all the relevant issues that have been going on and how it works, and I'm happy to say that it's been pretty educational. I met with the services. One of the main issues that is plaguing the services right now is that the whole renovations on the 7th floor has been disruptive for for example, the legal information clinic that has had they've been dealing with a lot of issues with the Concordia administration because they basically shut off the AC, and the office got very hot and very unbearable to work in. But I'm happy to say that we found a temporary solution for now, but now we're looking into the short, the medium, and the long term so that we can avoid this in the future. policy at its first meeting. We're going to be scheduling one in the next few days. Otherwise, that's the extent to my report, so if you have questions, feel free.
Chris?
Actually,
Maha?
Yeah, I just have more questions about the U Pass.
Yeah.
So the university pass, is that only for, like, for example, our shuttle bus, or are you talking about the STM?
I was thinking more than the STM. I was thinking more of a Montreal, like Greater Montreal wide. So, for example, Laval has one. The South Shore, there's the Longueuil one. I was thinking more of a more expansive one rather than just the STM.
Okay, but
Yeah.
in that case, it wouldn't be like through the. Are you trying to like create a federation of universities that's gonna head up the réseau transport, the?
So basically what would happen is that there would be a fee levy and the money would be collected either by the university or by the student union, and then it would send that money to a group called the ARTM, and we would be paying them, but it would be a collective lower fee because that's basically the idea behind it. And we'd also be, if that were to ever happen, we would also be looking into having better transportation for places such as at Loyola campus, which is incredibly underserved, and potentially what we can do with the downtown campus. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add to Patrick on that answer. We also, Patrick and I have both met in an informal context, the vice president of the STM. So we would probably, if the research is put together as it's probably going to be at the right time, we could maybe take it to that level next.
Thank you. Arad?
Yeah, so actually I still want to piggyback on that. So when you're saying provide better services, what exactly are we talking about? Because I still feel like I don't fully understand what exactly this UPass like consists of.
Okay, so let's just go back a step to talk about the Universal Transit Pass. So when you're paying student fees, for example, if you had a U-Pass, you'd be paying X amount. So let's just say you're at UBC, you'd be paying $71. That would go into that, and then you would automatically have access to a transit pass that would cover you for the semester that you're studying at. For your transit, that's basically, so it avoids a few things. One, you avoid the lines by going to, like you have to obviously fill up your pass, for example, so it avoids the lines. You don't have to worry about it. Another thing it does is that it also normally gets you huge discounts. While Montreal has a huge discount, I think we could be doing more in providing accessible and better transportation for students. So that would be like a thing. But to piggyback off of to go back to your main question as to better services, usually when you're dealing with the UPass program, there's usually a promise by the relevant transit authorities to have more services to your relevant campuses. So that could be, for example, a shuttle bus from the Loyola campus to Vendôme, for example. Instead, that could be one thing that would be provided by the STM. That's just an idea. I'm not saying that that's set in stone, but the fact of the matter is that I'm focusing on Loyola more than SGW because it doesn't have good services in terms of transportation. So, yeah.
Thank you. Lee?
This might just be more a clarificatory question than anything else, but it's generally the norm that committee minutes are attached to that document package that you send us.
It depends if the committee's met.
Oh, okay.
Well, the committee did meet, but I don't think it would be right. I should have written a report, yes, about the committee. However, the problem was that we didn't meet quorum, and if we did pass the minutes, it would be considered, I would think, as actual law, and I didn't want to do that. So that's I agree with you. If there's decisions that are being made, I agree there needs to be minutes made. But if there aren't, it's usually you can meet and talk about what we're going to be discussing over the year. But for decisions, completely agree. Yes, you need minutes. Yeah.
Thank you. Matt?
Thanks. So the UPass is a great initiative, and I really do hope it comes to fruition. However, that is more of a long-term project.
Yep.
But for now, though, have we looked into getting more shuttle buses to Loyola?
I think you can ask Melise about that. I think that's one of her passionate projects,
Okay, good.
the shuttle bus. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if there's nothing further for Patrick, then we can move on to the student life update. And Eduardo, this one's yours.
So,
I
I think it's okay. It's bright. So basically, my life has been dominated by one word and one word only, and that word has been orientation. orientation is the single biggest event that the CSU is going to host in the entire year. The most students, most of which are going to be new students, their first look at us is going to be through orientation. So it's very important for us to look very appealing and really good at orientation. So we have made a lineup of events, which me and my team of orientation coordinators are currently out fixing all the issues for those events. We could start, the first thing like that's major to say is catering for all the events. Last year, the CSU had barbecues. All the barbecues are dead. They died a horrible death last year from what I've been told. So we have no more barbecues. So the options are either buying new barbecues or getting our events catered. After looking at the money it would cost us to get all these barbecues, it is clearly much more economical to have our events catered. So we've been contacting many different caterers to make sure that we could come up with a menu that would have everyone's preferred dietary needs met. That's one part of it. The other part of it, and it's going to come back a little later on tonight, is the street closure. We want to close the street for 2 days to have both the community and clubs fair, but maybe extra things if we could squeeze them in there as well. Onto the street. That means talking with the city of Montreal to organize a street closure. There's many documents to fill up, safety concerns, as well as monetary concerns, and many things to do with the street closure, organizing on a citywide basis. So one of the things that came up, for example, was fire escape routes. So, for example, we cannot close Bishop Street, which is the one on the left side of Hall, because a fire truck route goes through there, so we had to move it to McKay. So it's a lot of things to consider that not necessarily you would realize right away. Then there's merchandise. We have a whole lineup of merchandise. Everything's going to be sustainable this year to tie in with the sustainability aspect, which we're going to host. We're going to try making orientation a zero waste event, which is immensely challenging, but I think is worth the payoff of it. What else for orientation mainly? Artists, trying to get some musicians to come. We're hoping for one big name musician, as well as then making a call out to FASA students so that we could get Concordia students basically do the opening acts to the show. I think it would be really good to give them exposure, to give them a stage, to give them basically the chance they need. Yeah, that's not in a nutshell, because there's many more smaller details to orientation that happen daily. Just the marketing of orientation, which is a huge thing to do with the design team. We're going through tote bags, posters, everything really. So that's, in a nutshell, I'll say is orientation. I'll just mention that I also was with the Hive. I sit on the board of the Hive, so while sitting on the board of the Hive, we're basically going through all the preparations for opening the Hive next year. Also student faculties, we've talked with CASA, ASFA, FASA, and ECA. FASA is going to collaborate on one of our events with us. It will be the one where we are doing the campaign launch. There's going to be some speakers. We're going to talk about sustainability, and afterwards there's going to be a small campaign launch, and FASA has agreed to collaborate with us on that. This is also pretty big news because it's the first time FASA will collaborate with us in, I think, 4 years for orientation, if I remember correctly. There's a possible talk of an ECA collaboration. CASA and ASFA, unfortunately, we were not able to make a deal. We were trying to make a big collaborative event during the early days, being ECA, CASA, ASFA, and CSU together. That unfortunately did not end up working. ECA pulled out of the deal with CASA and ASFA, and then it became just too, from a logistical point of view, it became very difficult for CSU to stay in there. So we had to pull out as well. We're hoping that we could get maybe some smaller collaborations throughout the year working with them, but it looks like for a big orientation one, that one did not work, unfortunately. I think that's a good amount there.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Eduardo? Yes, Sarah?
Dude, why the glasses?
It's too bright.
Oh, doesn't say anything.
Exactly.
Are there any further questions? Yeah,
Are
Victoria?
you gonna try to work on a way to, because I know you said the other associations didn't work with, whatever didn't work out. Are you gonna find a way to make it work for the years to come? Like maybe organize it earlier instead of organizing it the week before?
So it's not the week before. So this is
Well,
actually.
realistically, like, it's not even your fault, like, the mandate starts right before Frosh, like, Frosh is the first thing you have to do, like, I understand that, but I'm saying, like, so that way you can set it up so that in the future it'll be okay because you're setting it up so much in advance.
So this year, what we wanted to do was, it's normally always been an ECA, CASA, and ASFA event. It's always been like that. CSU's never been a part of it. This year, we wanted to become a part of it, to show up, to basically help logistically, financially, get our name out there, basically make good relations with the faculty associations. When we walked in there, there was quite a bit of tension in the room already between ECA and CASA, and ECA pulled out based on their own reasons for it, and then based on what was being proposed, it would have been the fact that we were doing our orientation week at the same time, and our budget would not have allowed us to basically have replaced ECA in the same capacity. So for us, it would have worked as a four-way thing financially, but not as a three-way thing. So it just became too expensive because most, for giving an example, most faculty associations, their frosh or orientation contains 3 events. Ours tends to contain 10 events. So we spend, ironically, almost the same amount of money as them, but we have a lot more to do. So we cannot just cut out a large portion of our money to go to one big event, because for them, they invest large amounts of money into events while we invest smaller amounts into multiple events.
So basically it's not gonna happen ever, is what you're telling me, like, it just, it's not feasible?
If ECA were to come back next year and rejoin that event with CASA and ASFA, CSU then could do it, because it would fall within a reasonable amount that we could actually spend.
Thank you. Lee?
You had mentioned that you were planning on making orientation zero waste, which is super great, but it's also a very lofty goal. Do you have any ideas on how you're going to achieve that, or who you're going to be working with to make that actually happen?
So there's many things that we're gonna do for that. Let's say the most obvious challenge that would hit us right out the door was all the people that take part in orientation. We have to get all of them to be zero waste as well. So something that's very popular at orientation is flyers. So people love to hand out flyers, booklets, read up on this, read up on that, to everyone that passes by. We got, from the library, we were able to get a deal where we got 165 laptops. So we hope that we could tell every club, here's a laptop for you to use during orientation. So instead of having flyers out, you can get people to like your Facebook page, which will give them long-term exposure to people, because most people are gonna take the flyer and throw it right out right away. So we have that, for example, so we're hoping to replace all flyers with electronic means of communication. As far as food goes, we're going to be working very strongly with Waste Not Want Not, the people that came to our last council meeting, to take care of food. So everything's gonna be divided by compost, recycling, all the bins are gonna be there. They're gonna be standing there helping. Furthermore, there's also a new organization at the school, which is an organization that takes all leftover food and is instantly gonna redistribute them to homeless shelters. So we're gonna be working with them. So a normal thing at orientation is that there's a lot of food left over afterwards from people not eating. So we're gonna get rid of all that with this organization. There's also many other things. So compostable materials. For example, one of our merchandise is gonna be a pencil that could then be planted into the ground and it makes a flower. So a lot of things to think of on the zero waste thing. I think that with the amount of work we've put into it, I don't want to cross my fingers and say we reach it, but if we were to miss it, we're about to miss it by very, very little on what would probably be just impossible to clean up. But we're easily going it's going really well.
Thank you. Isaiah?
Yeah, just to kind of clarify the collaboration, the reason why, because historically, okay,
the CSU, especially this year, is under some financial constraints. So as someone who's participated in Frosh, like as Ed mentioned, there was a collaboration event at Beach Club. So being that our mandate as the executives of the CSU is to try to reach as many students as possible, we try to take that opportunity to work with them on that collaboration event, not more so everyone's individual Froshes, so that we could add the most value to a diverse net of students. So being the frictions that happened this year and the collaboration split, that means, like, in theory, the amount of money we would be able to give to each party would be split or whatnot. But we didn't, and like we're not in like a financial zone where we could just go slap and give like, oh, here's money, go do what you want. We really wanted it to necessarily align with orientation and kind of kick off as like one of the big bangs of like, oh, well, stay tuned for orientation next week, and really showing people the unity of like 3 out of the 4 faculties with the CSU. It didn't work out because of like the directions that they're going this year, and we just don't have the resources to support to like, it's one thing if like it's one big event and we come and sit at the table. It's another thing where it's like, okay, you guys are running separate ships and we have to like we just don't, like, between orientation and different things we have going on, it wouldn't be smart, and we wouldn't be able to add value because we don't have the money that they're asking for at this level. Because with like, we wanted to partner with all 3, it would alleviate the financial constraints for everybody. But when you split the ship, then there's more cost for more activities. But that being said, depending on the vision for next year, we can definitely kind of put like a baton to be like, okay, depending on if this happens or whatnot, how the CSU can play a bigger role in Frosh, because it does affect a lot of our first year students, and it is prime time to make that connection with the CSU.
Thank you. Victoria?
My thing was a bit more money can help other associations, but like, there's more to offer to give other people value rather than just cash flows. So like, why didn't you, you could have came to council and said, oh, like, do you think we can have student representatives to go to each of their associations, or have like all your executive team like split up? Like, I just feel like there was more that could have been done other than just, oh, we can't give you money, okay, let's just like throw that whole idea. I feel like there could have been a compromise, and that's just what I wanted to bring up, and that was kind of my concern. I just wanted to like kind of let you know. But yeah, so maybe for future things, like things don't actually work out, you don't have to abandon ship, like you can find a middle ground or something that could add some type of value. But
Did you want an answer?
not really, I don't really care.
Okay, I'll do a speakers list. Mary?
Yeah, we are gonna still do that. We can't obviously like be like collaborative on their event, but we can still support them in the ways that we can. Like, for example, Isaiah's going to their event, he's gonna rep CSU. Eduardo's going to the ECA event, he's gonna rep CSU. We're gonna like maybe sponsor them in the way we can, but we're definitely gonna make sure the ties are there, the relationship's there.
Thank you. Edward? Oh, sorry, were you done?
Yeah.
Oh. Eduardo?
Oh.
Chris?
Yeah. Also, just to add another perspective to the whole what's going on with the faculty associations and our relationship now, because I've been at some of the meetings with Eduardo. I think it's going to be just a this year thing. It's specifically related to the people on the executives of the faculty associations. A lot of them have been on for many years. A lot of them have prior relationships with each other, and that seems to have contributed to the whole usual collaboration falling apart. As we all probably know, the turnover in student associations is extremely high. In just a year or 2 from now, like, the entire executive is going to be gone. It's going to be fully new people. So I don't think we have to worry about whether or not the CSU could be doing a collaboration with these organizations next year or the year after. Like, at some point, it's going to be all new relationships, and I think it's just about doing the best we can this year to make sure that everybody currently on those associations thinks as positively of the CSU as possible. And I do think that Eduardo's been putting in maximum effort at that. Marion's been putting effort. Isaiah's been putting effort. I think by January, like, everybody's going to be thinking something positive of us and what we've been doing. And I think it's going to set us up as positively as we can be for next year, to hopefully for the next executive team to immediately get on the ball, as you were saying early, to hopefully get involved with Frosh.
Thank you. Victoria?
Honestly, it's not worth it. I'll save my breath.
Okay. So if there's nothing further for Eduardo, we can move on to Marin with internal and clubs.
Alrighty. So, club orientation is on its way. We booked the 12th and 13th of September for club orientation. We're going to be doing it on the 9th floor of JMSB. It's going to be like conference style, where like tell the clubs how to book rooms, how to like manage budgets and all that stuff. We've had 2 committee meetings so far where we approved quite a few clubs and budgets, but there's still more to come. The co-op bookstore, we loaned the co-op bookstore a storage that they use for storage, which we're in the works of getting back now, so we might have an extra club room to give away soon. So that's good news. Retreat is pretty much finalized, so we're going to Notre Dame de Fatima, and it's going to be on the 12th. On the 20th of September, where we're going to have a small training in our CSU office with the lawyers, and then we're going to head there. This room is officially ours for the whole year, except for October. Yeah, and we got a whole bunch of like free condoms and pads and tampons, so we don't have to pay for those anymore. Lucky us. It was a promoter kind of person. We still have a lot of Diva cups from last year, so if you need those, we still have those. We met with Vanier College to discuss Bill 21, and me and Isaiah and Isaiah's assistant person are working on having an event for Bill 21 to discuss what strategies we're going to do to move forward. It's going to be on the 23rd of July, so that we can really, start off strong. We're also having another event for LGBTQIA, where we're getting all the leaders in the communities, and we're gonna work together on how to like really go all out during the Pride Parade in August. There's a list of like the approved clubs and budgets in my report. The CEO's office is officially moved out. We're giving it a paint job. We're cleaning the floors. We're putting a conference table in there, phone and computer, and that's gonna be your new office. It's unlocked now, but it's ugly now, so don't go in unless you want to be thoroughly unimpressed. What I realized in the past is we don't have any club constitutions from years and years ago, so I'm working on collecting all of those and making sure our stuff is all like organized and transparent and good. And we've officially finalized all the content we're putting in the agenda, as well as the article submissions. Now we're just doing a little bit of artwork, tweaks here and there, and then our agenda is basically done. And I've been working on that with Isaiah and Desiree.
All right, so thank you. Are there any questions for Marin? Is that a question or a?
That's it.
All right. Anything?
Comments, concerns?
Okay. If not, yes, Emma.
What's the meeting that you said you have in 23rd in July to work
Bill.
more? What's more? Yes.
So what we've done, we've co-hosted it to really show that we're building community at Concordia with like MSA, with Hillel, with Independent Jewish Voices, the Christian Fellowship, the religions on campus, and it's just an event where we're gonna have dinner together, and anyone who's affected by this bill can be invited. It's gonna be like a huge like meeting, and we're gonna talk about how we can collaborate as a Concordia community and get our voice across, and what we want to do as strategies to combat the new bill that was proposed by the government, how we're gonna fight it. And it's gonna be like breaking bread over like eating over dinner kind of thing. It's gonna be cute, I think.
I think that's a lot of comment, but I actually do think that's very important, because I'm not gonna name a group, but one of the groups you just mentioned was telling me how last council period, or whatever you want to call it, like they hated the CSU, like they hated their guts. They just told me they hated their guts, so I think it's good that we're trying to fix that, and I think it's important to keep that in mind.
I know what group you're talking about.
Okay.
It's not gonna be like that from here on out, promise you.
Is there anything further? Okay, if not, we can move on to Isaiah and the external and mobilization update.
Okay, hey guys.
So this past month, I've been meeting with the various external organizations. So as Marion meant, Vanier came to see us, and so we had different discussions about like how we can maybe interrelate the SAGEP community and the university community in terms of like what collaboration we could do. They're very excited to like have us at the table. They're planning a networking event hopefully, so we'll stay tuned for that. I haven't set up an official meeting with Dawson, but I used to be on the student union there, and I met some of their execs, so we're gonna set up a meeting probably sometime this summer. Laval University in Quebec came to visit me Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. We had a very interesting update there. A lot with the annual campaign being sustainability. There's a lot of like potential for people to come together because this is something that everyone is pushing for and that we want. The first group I actually met with, ironically, was McGill. Surprisingly, although there seems to be like an imaginary beef between Concordia and McGill in terms of like when it comes to student unions, we're relatively friendly. I got to meet with their external, and I'm sure, as you guys know, that we don't have a national representation. CSU avec dissolute. I'm sure Desiree will give an update on that later, but like this year, our mission is to stay single as an organization and really like not jump into like, oh, we need to invest a lot of money in national representation. So the goal would be to keep these lines of communications open and maybe set up like monthly or quarterly or whatever meetings we do to discuss these primary issues like Bill 21, sustainability, and all these things that affect all universities, all SAGEPs type things. In the vein of other unions, I got to meet with the external from CUPFA, which is the part-time faculty union, and TRAC, which is the teaching assistant, research assistant, and vigilators union. So meeting with them and seeing like how we can have each other's back in terms of like, because these different a union of unions is more powerful when we're trying to get things approved at Senate, at BOG, of these different seats, because they having like these good relationships will help us. Moving on in terms of more external but outside the CSU but within Concordia, I'm doing a type of sustainable outreach, or like one thing in my budget this year, I have something called Empowering Women. It's like kind of like there's different organizations in Concordia that kind of like that represent more push for women in like engineering and business and leadership in different organizations. So I'm trying to target, ERMAC met with JMWL. I'm gonna try to set up a meeting with women in engineering, and they already have like a type of collab event, so I'm gonna see how the CFCU can support them in those initiatives and really like bring more representation to like JMSB and engineering projects in that vein. A project that I have coming in August is kind of like, I know Vic, you mentioned before, like the relationships between these different, like whether it's JMSB, I have like, it's kind of like an executive brunch. It was something that was supposed to happen last year, but didn't. So it's like all of CASA's major associations and executive teams, so the ones that represent major base interests, the executive team, all of ECA, like ECA's different structures of equivalence, all 20, I think it's like 27 ASFA like associations, like the ones that kind of like represent this different issue, interest, like kind of academic, like there's a certain method to inviting people because like the budget is limited, but like, and then also FASA, like their executive, like representatives from their executives and their different subsidiaries to all come together and maybe in kind of in all early, like right before Frosh kicks in and then orientation in school, come together and show, like have their representatives maybe if they want showcase what they're having for the upcoming year, really bring people together to show, like kind of kick off the year of letting the people know the people around them and like really build that network so that they know that one, the CSU has these opportunities that can support them, and two, to kind of inform them what we're doing in terms of like the campaign and the sustainability for this year. As Marin mentioned, we had the Bill 21 town hall that's going to happen on the 23rd, and she covered that really well. So over the course of the month, we also picked the annual campaign slogan. It's going to be like, if if not now, when? And like that's kind of be like right now the designers and the different campaign like between Ermac and orientation, like we're trying to kind of do that synergy where we align all these things together to get the most impact. Because in previous years, kind of the annual campaign was its own thing and orientation was the other thing. But between the fact that Ed and I like working together and the fact that like this is like the union's project, it's going to be where it's going to get the most visibility. So having the launch in the campaign and maybe having another 1-2 event like a speakers, I think as Chris mentioned, would be really give it that push at the beginning of the year to really get it going and keep the momentum up. In terms of one of the roles of externals, based off of positions book, there's certain groups in my budget that can just receive funding just because we have a position. So kind of like the tuition hikes or the border, the solidarity across borders, if I'm not mistaken. So different things that we support in our positions book, like they have funding that they can just check rec. And then looking in part of my job also is like there were some loose ends that weren't tied up in terms of people's funding applications or not getting their checks. So every other day, like someone's coming like, where's my money? Why hasn't this been getting out? So solving a lot of those things. As I mentioned, collabing with Ed and his staff on orientation collab, and then also speaking to Waste Not Whatnot. Waste Not Whatnot.
That's it.
Okay, yeah. Trying to see, like, really trying to support these different organizations who are already taking a stance on sustainability and seeing what value I can add to them and like to answer their needs to help them further reach out their message. I'm also doing my best to get CAF settled up, but as Desiree and I are on BIPOC, we need to set up BIPOC to get that member for CAF, and I'm still waiting for some external organizations. I think like I'm not good with all the acronyms, but I'm still waiting for people to select the representative. Yes, there we go. Representative, so that we can get the body up and going. I know that I'm gonna have to call a meeting for my lovely external committee soon because we opened the funding applications, I believe. So now I'm gonna have to see where see some of those when the emails start coming in to review some of the funding applications. Sorry. Something I took on as a pet project is it genuinely and kind of like it personally annoys me because of considering my major, but like looking at some of the unions like financial literacy in the past or like some of both the decisions and just budget, like it's a strain on the employee and it strains on the executives when things are not thought of in advance. Like all the money that been like there was no clear way of keeping track of money, and then it's just people going at the end of the year being like, oh, I thought I spent like XYZ amount of money when I really only spent like XYZ amount of money. So I created like this budgeting system in Excel it's like some Excel hoo-ha for people who don't use it, and that will allow us to, like, if we're due diligent every month, track each individual expense and make Desiree's life easier and our lives easier in reconciling what we're spending money on and where it's going, what lines is coming out, so that we don't go and give out money we don't have, or like that we just kind of know where we're at by mid-year review. So I'm gonna slowly start meeting with like the different execs to try to like help them set it up for their budget, so then they just become autonomous with it. What's it called? So that's budgeting. Desiree and I also sit on the wood note. Does everyone here know what the wood note is? Okay, good. So it's like they're really in like the leasing year. So their committee is coming together and they're really trying to get the student buy-in now, so that by next year around fall, when the building is actually built, we will have like, they will be able to have students move in and start living in these leases. So I'm working with the intern and different representatives and Hojo and UTIL to kind of like maybe reach out to the faculty associations so that they can get a presentation and know what the wood note is and see how best we could work together to try to reach their respective student bodies, because the wood note is for all Concordia students, so we don't want just like, I don't know, a bunch of JMSB people living in the wood note. We want it to be as diverse as possible and give everybody who needs the opportunity for affordable housing to get it. So that's something, and then BIPOC was sent out a few weeks ago. The deadline was July 7th to apply. I just got, our IT person just got off vacation, and now I have access to the email, so Desiree and I will be starting to recruit people for BIPOC. And then once that committee is up and running, like get a strategic plan for the year, make the budget and everything. Avec furniture, this will go into Desiree, but like as I said before in the national student representation, it was really costly at the time and a really big headache for the executives to kind of like try to micromanage this national, like is it national student representation? Yeah, so it's like, it's kind of like it's supposed to be like another union amongst unions to represent like the needs and wants and whatnot, but AVEC wasn't necessarily the most successful or most well thought out plan, and so it ended up dissoluting. So being that the CSU was one of the biggest like investors in terms of both membership and financial, a lot of that furniture came back to us. So it's like we're working. Desiree's going to do inventory, but we had all the relevant stuff moved into CSU space, all this stuff, and then we're going to just like see what we can do with it, see how we're going to distribute it, and all that good stuff. I personally sat on the Fall Reading Week committee, not as necessarily. Well, kind of as a duality. They needed a JMSB representation, and I believe that there was a CSU seat available as well, so I kind of occupy the room there. And based off our last meeting, as much as I really wanted the Fall Reading Week to happen in fall 2020, based off of some rational decisions, the earliest that we're gonna get it is fall 2021, because based off of the different Fall Reading Week, as much as students have echoed and events have transpired that show that students need and want a Fall Reading Week, the admins share that goal. However, like the university is like a spider web of different staff, faculty, like just a bunch of different people who that like, based off of the solutions that were proposed, would either be starting, let's say, every year September 1st instead of after Labor Day, or starting earlier, or going as extreme as making it a 12-week semester instead of a 13-week semester. So as much as I was like the Band-Aid to be ripped off and we just implement a Fall Reading Week, because fall 2020 was the perfect way to, like if we implemented now, it would be something that would work. And they want to make sure that everybody at least knows of the process, and like we're going to do a consultation year in terms of like getting the different buy-ins from the student parties, from the faculty, and then based off that data and everything, they're going to hopefully the committee will we will implement like whatever the best like perceived strategy of implementation that we have developed is. We'll implement it for the terms of fall 2021 and winter fall 2020. Fall 2021 and winter 2022. And I also sit on Reggie's, on the president of Reggie's. And so I deal with calling certain meetings and like certain operation stuff in the background. And I believe that is it.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, okay. Just one quick thing about AVEC. This was Marin's idea, and I think it's a great one. She was talking about how for CEGEPs, you don't need, when you're creating a union for unions, you don't need to inject it with like hundreds of thousands of dollars for it to be successful. The organization could just be a voluntary association for free. And it could, I mean, in most cases, will probably accomplish the same thing. In fact, I don't think you should start injecting money into an organization until it proves itself. So to do it for free first, as a voluntary association, and to work towards building that relationship and slowly building up the infrastructure. I mean, if we do want to go about creating another organization like AVEC, I think that's the wisest course of action.
Thank you. Maha?
Thanks. This is more about the Fall Reading Week, because I understand that like the admin and all of the staff, so there's going to be pushback on that because of statistics. But if we just do like the Queen's University did, instead of having a full week, there's already a week. So the reason why like a lot of universities, they said since there's so many holidays during the fall semester, like they all add up, and so that's why they don't do it. But there is 1 week where I think that we have 2 days off. And so what Queen's University did was that they gave the the 3 remaining days of that week off. And so that way, even though technically we get a week, it's great because the administration and the staff and all of them, they only have to plan for 3 days instead of a full week.
They gave, luckily for us, McGill had already done this preliminary research and kind of did, because they're looking for a fall reading week themselves. And so we had this big document of all the different combinations of all the different fall reading weeks, whether they had engineering or not, whether they had accredited programs, all that good stuff. And so it's for us, one of the big pushbacks at first was engineering. They're engineering have certain contact weeks. The engineering people at the room corrected them and said, we don't have contact, or we don't have contact weeks or a certain number of classes. We have contact hours. So whatever solution we implement, we just have to make sure that the hours for engineering represent the total amount of contact, practical work that they have to do in order to get their accreditation. For Quebec, it's a little tricky because I don't think we get a lot of Mondays off. Especially this past fall with the provincial elections, we had the way that the university is set up when they make the academic calendar, one of the other constraints is they wait till July of whatever year to make it for the next following year. So this year we are in summer 2019, and we're making the academic calendar for fall 2020, winter 2021. So the constraint, they try to do this a year advance because they have to go to all these different apartments and get the deadlines, the DNA, they go and do this counting system of the days. The problem with fall, typically for us, is both Labor Day and the consistent amount of Mondays which are off. And so when you get a Monday off, it kind of messes with the counting of the weeks, and then things are pushed back and they have makeup days. You need 14 regular exam days so that you need 14 days of exam. You need the way HR is set up, they need a certain amount of time off before the winter says, their collective agreement makes them have a certain amount of days off for winter. So there's a lot of variables, and that was one of I think they ran 4 scenarios at our meeting on Tuesday. One scenario was obviously we just leave it as is, which was a no. The second, these scenarios are run for 2020, 2021. The second scenario was what if they did something called a fall reading week break, where they just give us Thursday and Friday off. And I'm well, that's not really fair because in JMSB, we don't even have classes Friday typically. So if you tell me that, oh, we have Friday off, I'm well, probability states I already have Friday off. So it's it's not the most inclusive. It would be and it's not, it doesn't really mess up, that doesn't add any value. At that point, you have to, if you look at the one where we start on September 1st, but we add a week, it ends at the same result as if we just add 2 days. You might as well add the full week in that case. And then another one was the 12, did we run a 12-week scenario? But we did these different scenarios, but the one thing that the university won't flex on is their consultation. And I made a clear point to ask to make sure that this consultation was not consensus-based. Because if they were going to tell me that we're going to try to get all these people and all these admins and all these people, whatever, and been we're going to try to get them on the same page, then that would be a no-win situation. But the end result is they want to consult everyone with these proposals and the different research that we've done, see how people perceive it and what is kind of the concerns at the table, and then bring this back probably, I think, winter 2020 to try to make the committee make an actual decision which will be implemented for fall 2021. At least this was the meeting yesterday. What they want, they really want to consult everyone because the biggest fear is that, let's say we do it and it's a disaster, and then it's you didn't ask anyone before. It's just they just don't like that.
Which is understandable, but let's get the deadline. I don't think it's still probable to have a fall reading week for next year and not in 2 years.
Well, the reason why is not because they made the academic calendar this July. So it's once they make for July for 2020. So our deadline would be the end of July, and they can't get that consultation before, no one's here, first of all, our student bodies, our incomers, our newcomers, everyone's our president's down, people on vacation. So even if I was like, well, go consult everybody, it wouldn't be representative of the population. So that's why they want to wait till at least fall to do the consultation. We're going to have a few more meetings to see what that consultation will look like. What will the surveys, how will we get these to students? How will we get this to faculty? How will we do this? They will do it in the fall, and then ideally we make a decision in the winter so that by that time, July of 2020, when they're making the academic calendar for 2021, 2022, then that will be when we implement it. Because they don't want to make any, they don't want to do a test run or a trial and then get feedback as I suggested, but it's more so just to kind of like appease everybody at the table to some extent.
Thank you. Arad?
Yeah, I actually have a suggestion, like a proposition or whatever. So given that, like, I think now there's at least some pen to the paper of like, we have intention of doing consultations for this, right? Maybe you can do like a social media campaign or something saying, hey, you know, great news, administration is already investigating the possibility of a fall reading week, and get the word out there. And that kind of puts pressure on, like a bottom-up pressure of like students now being more aware that this is a possibility and now kind of wanting it more. I think it's going to be a more useful thing to have because, again, oftentimes they try to just like push things off to like forever later. And so you kind of want enough pressure that lasts throughout the year so that when next year comes and they have to implement it, that it's not easy to push it off again. You know what I mean?
Do it.
Did you want to answer to it, or was it
It's
more
a
of
proposition. You can answer if you want.
well, Chris?
Whoever wants.
Yeah,
Was
I mean,
next
it's
on
not exactly a direct answer, but what you're saying is really true, and that's why I think it's important not to forget what Patrick said he was going to do a month ago. He's creating a petition to have a referendum question that says, do you support fall reading week? And the value of that is, let's say 96% of people say yes, which if they said yes, if that many said yes to online voting, I think even more will probably agree to fall reading week. Then you could go, look, the students want it, and I think it will create that pressure. So, and also like from the conversations we had with the president and with the provost, it seems like they do value what happens in referendum. Like it does actually make them, like they really are skeptical of the CSU and the executives who come to them. They really go, do you really, and I heard them say this multiple times, do you really represent the students? Do people even vote in your elections? That's what they were saying. So if we could show them, look, this many people voted and this many people said they want fall reading week, that might get them a bit more faithful in us. Not even get them, like it will force them to be more faithful and to take our word.
Thank you. Eduardo?
Everson.
Okay, so if there's nothing further for Isaiah, then we can move on to the finance coordinator update. And Desiree, this one's yours.
So, hi everyone. The last month, most of my time has been the just usual day-to-day operations with the student requests, with the check requisitions, following up on checks that either were lost or weren't sent, or were sent but to the bad address. So it's just a lot of administrative work. Last week I met with the Center for Gender Advocacy because they have something called a mapping project. FinCom from last year mandated us this year to put it on their operational budget, so it's a $40,000 project. So I'm meeting with them to figure out some not pricing, but how we're gonna pay them, how they're gonna give reports to us because no contract was drafted. So that's gonna be an ongoing process for the next few weeks. Speaking with Robert and their coordinators, so yeah, that's them. Working on the finance policy after meeting with Patrick, Robert, and Chris, I kept working on it, and to the notes we had, I've modified it. Haven't brought it to FinCom yet because it's not perfectly done, but that's an ongoing process. A few things might be changed. As Chris mentioned, we met with Student Care ASEC for this dental and health care plan. We modified it, so it's going to be more expensive this year. We can discuss it if you have questions. But we're still focusing on the international student plan as, well, right now we're not doing anything, but that's a whole plan, as in we're not participating with Concordia. We're still putting pressure on them in the sense that we want to take over the plan because we truly think that we have the international students' interests at heart compared to Concordia, who may see them as cash cows in a way. The Silk Fund, I've been familiarizing myself with it. Still a lot to learn, but it's been a study. Because actually today I want to have the rock pass through silk. So that'll be a motion presented later on. I'll answer questions if you have some. One specific thing that we discussed earlier in our exec meeting last year, one specific check is on hold right now because one person has, there was unidentified labor that was given out. It's not, unidentified labor makes it sound way shadier than it is, but it is truly unidentified. No, it's not that bad, but it's just, we're paying her for something. The check hasn't been written out, but we're paying her for something that isn't clear right now. So we're contacting her to see exactly what was done. But that whole situation has made the whole execs kind of wary of having people come in from the exterior and paying them to do stuff and then not being fully clear. Because right now we're in a position where we want to pay this person because they were promised some money, but at the same time we don't know what the money is being given out to. So it's just, we'll probably be installing some policies in the upcoming year to just make sure that this type of things don't happen in the future because it's against what everyone around this table stands for. Avec, as Isaiah mentioned, avec dissoluded, I took care of the move of the furniture, so that had absolutely nothing to do with finance. It was just moving stuff. And stuff. And that was Monday, essentially. That was my whole Monday morning. And I also went on Friday to see exactly, just see visually what was there because there was a lot of, it was an email back and forth with them, and then the new tenants were coming in. Anyway, it was a whole logistical nightmare, but now all this stuff is on the 7th floor. It's just figuring out who in the CSU offices get what. We're thinking the CSU office is the priority, then it'll be clubs. And then after that, it'll go to other people around campus, whether it be ASFA, I know are interested in stuff, whether it be there's a project ongoing, and then also possibly selling it to individuals. So it's just figuring out how these objects will be distributed. Oh, and also probably the Avec de Solution money will be coming in the future. The specific amount has been, the number thrown around has changed depending on who I talk to, but the last I've heard would be a few tens of thousands of dollars, like goal max $20,000. So that, but I don't know for sure yet. That would possibly be Isaiah and I taking care of that dissolution process because right now it's only people from Université de Rimouski that are taking care of it. And speaking with my contact from AVEC, she was telling me how she'd really want someone from the CSU part of that conversation, or else we'll just be forgotten. And it was Camille before that was doing that. That was part of that conversation, so that's why external would be on that around that table, and I would be around the table because I've been speaking to this person for a few weeks now. And that's, yeah, agenda also. That was fun. No, it's almost done. Yeah.
Are there any questions or comments for Desiree?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's Arad.
Oh yeah, actually I didn't even raise my hand, but yeah. So about the damn, I can't remember the word, but like student insurance. No, the insurance one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny. I was thinking about like possibly raising the cost, but like raising the services provided. So like what?
Yeah,
what's
that's exactly. So in the last 2 years, the costs have been $175 per year. Speaking with ASEC, with inflation and because it's been a fixed rate for so long and it's actually been much lower than ever before, they were proposing increase to $195, but that's without increasing the services. It's just, this is what they're proposing.
Okay, with inflation. Okay.
Yeah, with inflation and everything. I have the documents also, not here, but that can be provided if ever need be. Yes, and then the team discussed about increasing the mental health services, and we agreed to, I think it was $10 or $11 increase, which would bring the total cost of $206 per year. And it would, now we're going to cover, well, they're going to cover 80% of your visits to any type of mental health therapy support. And also there's going to be a higher cap. The numbers I don't have right now. I don't want to tell you something that's not true. Yeah.
So basically, the numbers before were a $75 per visit allowance and a $600 cap for psychological counseling, but we're changing it to a percentage-based model, so students will actually pay less out of their pocket every time they go there. So it's a percentage-based model, so it's 80%. The going rate for something like a psychological counseling is around $140 per visit in Montreal. So you're saving $30 more per visit usually, and the cap is raising from $600 to $750. So it's going up by $10 or $11, but this is a worthwhile investment for students in like the coming years. Most other universities most other student unions have the cap, and they tend to save more money that way. Yeah.
Just more so, the reason why we're looking at percentage based is because if you keep it at a fixed number of like 75, things with inflation just rise. And so it's like right now, as Pat said, that's about 50% if we kept it at 75 per dollar. And yes, you're encouraging them to get 10 visits, but they pay more out of pocket every visit. Whereas like switching it to an 80% is kind of like encouraging them, like, listen, what you get, what you need at less expense to you at a higher limit now.
Thank you. Jared?
We do have quorum right now, right? I know that they're coming back, but just right now, do we have it?
No, not right now. We're not voting on anything.
I know, I just wanted to.
But also, until you call the quorum,
Okay.
it's not an issue.
Yeah.
Are you calling quorum?
No, I was wondering.
I mean, we definitely have it.
Yeah,
Never
you're
mind.
sitting on the table, so
Okay.
We're just listening nicely. Is there, I just want to add something. I just learned this as we were talking about the healthcare, but there was a cap that was passed through referendum at $225. So, and as long as we're under that, everything is,
Static.
yeah, everything is good. Just full disclaimer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else for Desiree? All right, if not, we can move on to Loyola, and Millie's, this is yours.
Hi. So I'm currently working on a cultural orientation. So rather than having cultural fair this year, I've contacted all the cultural associations around Concordia, and I just decided to let them have like their own day to organize like a bunch of events rather than like a bunch of booths and people float around. And that like spans over the course of like once a week for 6 weeks. And then currently I'm contacting speakers because I would like to get like 3 speakers to come to Loyola to speak on the behalf of like the 3 different like types of departments that are offered at Loyola. So physical science, life science, and like comms and journalism. So hopefully I can get some bigger names to come. And then for BIPOC committee, I contacted, or for Black History Month, I contacted Leland Melvin, who is one of the 14 Black astronauts. So we are currently working with him on trying to get him for Black History Month, Spirit Fingers. So then I'm also contacting a bunch of sponsors. I've contacted like over 100 at this point, working on that. I spoke to Roger Cote, who is the VP of Services, and we talked about a couple of different things, such as getting Wi-Fi on the buses, increasing the amount of buses, the fact that some of the bathrooms in Loyola smell like mildew, and that's very healthy. De-icing, because it was very slippery this winter, and potentially seeing like what's going on with the music boxes inside of the basement of the SC building, because they collect dust. Currently I'm on the Loyola working group. They have absolutely no meetings scheduled for the summer, so it'll be productive. I am looking currently into electronic poster boards, so as opposed to having over the last couple of years, people kept suggesting that we should fix and like restructure the Loyola poster boards, but I think it would be more sustainable to instead just have like one electronic poster board per building in the high visibility areas, as it would save a lot of paper. It would reduce the amount of time that things that are no longer relevant stay up there, as well as, yeah, paper. Currently, I met with a Loyola committee, A couple of the things that we want to work on is the increasing the amount of recreation at Loyola. So I'm currently looking into different ways of that. We also decide to have monthly GAs, which is just like once a month, like during the high free lunch period, having just kind of like a recap and allowing people to also give their feedback about how they think Loyola is doing, how they could do more interesting things, etc. As well as like with the monthly GA, we'll also be speaking about one campaign per month. So the campaigns are LGBTQ plus awareness, Indigenous rights, and sex ed, sexual violence consent. And I met with Sustainability Committee. I'm also checking into to see right now how often, and trying to help the service leaders with seeing how often will they be at Loyola over the year. Currently, we're trying to work on a Loyola survey to, one, figure out what to do with the G Lounge, because it seems like in the past with surveys, for like figuring out what to do with the G Lounge, people have said that they think it should be allocated to additional study space, but that may just be a product of not only Loyola people being the one voting on it. So we're trying to figure out how to get a Loyola survey so that only Loyola students can vote on what happens with the G Lounge, as well as just getting some other ideas clarified for what do people need, what do people know about Loyola. And one of the things that we also worked on during the Loyola committee was just about kind of the structure of Loyola committee, also Loyola coordinator position. Loyola coordinator has one of the world's most vaguest job descriptions ever, so it's kind of put me in this weird spot where like I have a lot of things I want to do, but there's really no guarantee that that will continue, considering that the job description just says support and have the campus like image at Loyola, which could really mean anything. So over the course of the year, we're going to be looking into different ways to like just see what I end up doing and seeing how can we fix the Loyola description so that it's better for others, as well as seeing what we could do as Loyola committee to make sure it's also more structured in terms of description. With that also came the whole issue of me not having that much autonomy, because in the past Loyola only had $5,000 as the entire budget. And the idea has always been Loyola just ask other people for money and hopefully we get it, and we might not, and maybe we will, but eh. So the Loyola budget has been increased, but I did think that it would be helpful as well for it to be increased a bit further, just to ensure like better autonomy, so that Loyola coordinator doesn't have to ask everybody for spare change. So currently with the whole AVEC dissolution, some of that money could potentially be invested in creating, like going towards more events, and some of that also being directed for Loyola events. And I will be not here at the second council meeting in October, and I have a letter.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Melise? Okay. There's nothing. We will have to vote on approving the written reports and the committee minutes. I guess we'll wait till Victoria comes back to do that. Sorry?
Victoria, I think you
Oh,
have
yeah.
five, so we just need one.
Yeah, one of the two.
Yeah.
Okay, so if not, we can move on to the sustainability update, and I guess Chris?
Yeah, I guess I can give an update on that. So as we all know, Selena has resigned. There was a bit of a conflict with us figuring out who is in charge of appointing the next sustainability coordinator. Is it the general coordinator? Is it the council? I filed basically a form. What should we call it?
It's a request for reference decision.
There we
That's
go.
what it's
A request for reference decision to the judicial board, so they will be deciding how we are to proceed with the sustainability coordinator appointment. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, yes.
Is there any timeline on this? Do we know when they're going to get back to us at all, or?
Yeah, there is a timeline stipulated in their code of procedures. The thing is, they reached out to us for more information. It was just a couple of simple, straightforward questions, and I sent them responses to it. They just wanted a bit of context. So I sent that yesterday, and then they should be making a decision fairly soon. Like, I'd say by the end of the week, I'd like to think, but I'm just guessing here. Right? So if there's nothing further, we just need a motion to approve all of the written reports that were submitted to council this
I
year.
motion to approve all of.
Motion to second it.
Go ahead, Jared. Sorry.
You don't even know what I'm motioning right yet. Motion to approve all the. I motion to approve all the committee minutes
Committee minutes and executive.
and executive reports.
All right, thank you.
Second.
No, I second.
Okay. Is there any opposition? Okay, so those are approved by council, and we can move on with the agenda. We're at council retreat update, and I presume this is Mary?
Yeah, we just paid the deposit, so it's gonna be in El Perro, Notre Dame de Fatima. It's a campground. There's a lake, there's a bonfire, there's cabins. We're opting for the cheaper options, so you'd have to bring your own sheets and pillowcases. There's some rules that I brought around, and I could pass it around. I have actually the quote too, if you guys want to look at that. Food, there is a vegan and vegetarian option for those who are vegan or vegetarian. I think it's going to be a good weekend for us to learn about each other. The rooms have 4 beds each, but there's going to be extra. Each cabin has 2 bathrooms with 3 stalls and 2 showers. Any questions?
Maha?
So, we're gonna be camping. Sorry. I guess I just need to make sure that there's gonna be electricity and stuff like at the cabins.
Oh yeah, there's a whole huge meeting room. There's TV room. There's dining table thing.
How are we gonna get there?
That I'm still figuring out actually.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the most sustainable option.
Arad?
I was sent.
Okay. Isaiah?
What's it called? Is there hot water?
Yes.
And
Okay, I do actually.
what's it called? No, we don't. My community, no.
I'm gonna have to pass these around.
And what's it called? The retreat is the weekend of the 21st of September.
20th. Yeah.
Okay.
On the 20th, we're gonna start with the training in the CSU conference rooms with lawyers who are paid by the hour, so should be good.
All right, thank you. Jared?
Just like something that's go out there. I know that's something that's sometimes happened in the past for transportation is just counselors and executives with cars would like carpool, and we would just all drive there, with like groups of 4 or 5 people a car. Bada bing, bada boom. That's not what we have to do, but that's just something that I've seen happen in the past, just to throw out some ideas.
I should ask around, I guess.
Okay.
Well, I have a car, so we can start with that.
Does anyone have a van?
I would suggest putting a poll in the Facebook group because there's only like 5 counselors
Yeah,
here.
you're right.
I have a car, nobody ever wants it because it doesn't have an aux cord, so.
Do you have a van?
Yeah, it's
If you have a car then.
Knock shotgun in there.
All right, Arad, you're a speaker, sir?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say like guys, chill. Like we're all gonna suffer together a little bit, but that's part of the fun of it. So.
Thank you. Lee?
This is my first time going on a retreat. Do you mind telling us a little bit about what we're going to be doing on the retreat?
Yeah.
Besides just camping, which I'm really into.
Really into or not?
I'm very into camping.
Perfect.
This is the first time I'm going on a retreat with CSU, but I've been to this place twice before, and I've gone on other student union retreats. And basically we're gonna arrive around 5 p.m. Usually we'll just chill, relax. We would have passed by a grocery store. They don't give us dinner the first night, so we usually just like eat snacks or have like, we can go to a restaurant if you guys want or order pizza or whatever. It's not in the middle of nowhere. Usually we go outside to the bonfire, roast marshmallows on the first night because it's like everyone just got there. You run, you dibs your room, you dibs your roommate. And then we usually just bonfire things, lake, what's it called? Rock throwing or rock skipping. Just fun, you know, exploring the wilderness. Day 2, we wake up 10 a.m. We do some communication training. We learn about each other. We talk about, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And then we can have fun in the afternoon because it's a retreat and we're all students and we know what fun means. And then we can stay up late watching movies or like braid each other's hair. No. Or we can go outside, you know, do fun stuff. Friday we wake up 10 a.m., pack our bags, go home. Sunday, sorry. There's like 4 showers in each cabin, 6 stalls in each bathroom, 2 sinks in each bathroom, and there's 2 bathrooms in each cabin. There's 4 rooms in each cabin, but we're getting the big one, so I think there's 6 rooms. Each room has 2 beds and like a thing where you can put your clothes. 4 beds, yeah, but usually the cabin is bigger than what we need, so you can have like 1 person in a room or 4 people in a room, depending on how people feel and how people dibs rooms.
Thank you. Rep?
Given that most of my friends are female in this group, are mixed rooms a thing?
I mean, if you want.
All right.
But I'd like to like re-emphasize the code of conduct, consent, sensitivity. Okay. We're actually on Friday. If I get these things booked, we're gonna do a consent training Friday before we leave on the bus. If I get the bus, we're doing the training with the lawyers, and we're gonna do sensitivity training and whatever else I can get on Friday. Yeah.
Thank you. Isaiah? Did you have a...
Wait, you said pillows and sheets?
Yes. Because we opted for the cheaper option, we have to bring our own pillows and sheets.
I'd rather bring my.
Yeah, I always bring my.
I'll bring you a sleeping bag, it's chill.
And we propose going to like a Provigo before, on our way there, just to pick up snacks, or Costco, to pick up snacks because they won't give us dinner on 2 of the day, on the first day. And
Thank you. Okay, is there anything further on council retreat update? Okay, so if not, we can move on to donations from last year. And Chris, this one you submitted? Unless it was, Maren.
Well, Maren's going to be handling it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna pull it up. So, I just say the motion, or do I give
start with
context
the motion,
first?
please.
Okay.
Or the whereas, like, just like the wording of the motion.
I don't have the whereas on the motion.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Did you send it to me?
No.
Oh, okay, as long as it's posted in the Facebook group.
I'll
or
go
something,
post it
so-
right now. I move to rescind the motion moved by John Hutton and seconded by Margaret Berner on May 2nd, 2019 to reallocate the executive hardware allowances conference budget line executive discretionary funds and the executive telephone allowances for the purpose of donating. So I need context? Or
do we have a second? Well, it needs to be seconded to be discussed. Patrick? Okay, your motivation?
Okay. Whereas FinCom reversed a motion made within council through approving the following motion. This is the motion that was made that I'm rescinding. In the last weeks of the fiscal year, any unspent amounts in the budget for executive discretionary spending, telephone allowances, hardware allowances, and the conferences shall be pulled together. Each executive may choose to donate 1/8 of that amount to charity to a community organization of their choice. I have a few other reasons, but do you guys understand the concept? No. Okay. So we, in our budget line for executives, there are a few budget lines that are titled telephone allowances, hardware allowances, conference budget, and discretionary fund. So these are 4 motions, 4 budgets that are primarily used for purposes of executives to like use freely, kind of. Like our discretionary fund, like whenever we buy you guys food for like committee meetings and stuff, it usually comes out of our discretionary fund, which is like a budget line of, it used to be 625, but we moved it to 500. We cut it to 500 because we were tight on budget. Hardware allowances is if like any of our things break, like our laptops, our phones, it's a $400 budget. Conferences, also, yeah, if executives want to go to conferences, there's a budget line for that. We decided this year to cut it because we couldn't afford that. But last year they had a budget. And then telephones, just like telephones. So the executive last year didn't fully spend these budgets, so they moved to donate them. I'm moving to rescind that because of the following reasons that I'm going to read. The following motion reallocates the purpose of the amounts motioned at council in the original budget breakdown, as well as comes from funds not budgeted originally and developed through the committee, whereas council has higher governing power than committees. So in the committee, and when we first approve or for them in the mid-review, when they approve the mid-review of all the budget breakdowns and budget lines, that was approved by council. And then in a committee of quorum, I'm not sure how many were there, they kind of reversed that by creating a new purpose for the lines, by creating a new purpose for those budget lines, which is not right because council has more governing authority than committees because of the people there. In addition, this motion violates the original intended purpose of the budget lines and it's not executive money to allocate other than the purpose of supporting the purpose of the budget and for Concordia students. The operational budget ended in the 2018-2019 fiscal year with approximately, I wrote 40K, but Desiree corrected me. It was a deficit of 140?
No, you wrote.
Oh, operational. Okay, yeah, you changed it.
Operational was 40.
So the operational, yeah, clubs was 100. So a deficit of.
You said it's a deficit of that much, or it's a surplus?
Deficit of 40K. Therefore, if this motion were to pass, the cash flow of the funds for this would be coming from cash flow of funds that were received over the summer to sustain our summer activities, and not from the funds received. So these are funds received after their mandate has ended, considering they ended in a deficit. The last executive year, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are aware of this, but they had to take out a loan of $250,000 to remain afloat because we were in so much deficit. We're now paying back that loan, $50K a year plus insurance, plus interest, which you've seen in the budget proposal that Desiree has presented last meeting, until it's returned in full. Therefore, the only reason that they were able to have funds to even function is because of that $250K. And therefore, it's extremely bad financial practice to donate funds left from budget lines that were not spent if we do not have physical funds that have taken a loan to be able to obtain those physical funds. This is financial mismanagement. So what I'm saying by this is we had to borrow $250K to stay afloat. But that specific budget line wasn't fully spent, but then another budget line was overspent. So technically the money is not there. And they had to take a loan. So technically, again, we're even more in deficit than we thought. We have barely 100 something K in the bank account.
But cash flow is an addition.
Yeah, we have to
Cash flow
halt
is
checks
not.
as they need to be able to operate. The union's mandate is to support our students financially, not to donate to external organizations financially. That's another reason. The motion was a rush decision made in the last month of their mandate, and I believe that this should have been done during the mid-mandate review to reallocate officially in council what funds would be given out, and not in the last month to change the purpose of a budget line. They have asked to give these themselves as donations from each executive from the CSU money to their charities, which I think is also an issue. Be it resolved, this motion be reserved, and the funds be not taken from the CSU. Question?
Right, so just to clarify, because it's rescinding a motion and there was no notice given, it is going to require a 2/3 majority. Goes to the importance of submitting the motions to council before
Oh, the
council.
specific motion?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the motion needs to be given to council, or else it counts as no notice,
Okay.
which is important when you're rescinding something
makes sense.
previously
Makes
adopted.
sense, yeah.
So move on to the speakers list. Eduardo?
Just to summarize everything Marin said in one small amount, like nutshell, we had no money last year. We had to take a loan out from the Silk Fund, or else we would not have been able to pay our employees for 3 months. We took this loan out to pay people off, basically keep the CSU running. The last month came, they had some extra money left over for their own personal uses, which is supposed to be to help themselves with hardware generally. I was in that meeting when we approved that. I also want to note that at the time, John said that it would only be about $500 per executive, and it ended up going into about $1,500 for executive. And again, they wanted to donate to charity money that they did not have, and that's basically it.
Thank you. Victoria?
I just want to understand, so you said we took the money from the Silk Fund, and now we're paying interest on it. What's the point of having all the money like aside if we can't? Yeah, you're finance, so maybe you can tell me what's going on, because I'm gonna need it for my Comp 308, so please.
The way the Silk Fund is set, it was like money set aside by student funds in order for the purpose of buying a student center, so that we could have like a student space for students. So that is in an investment account gaining interest. Remember, the cost of money is interest. So when we give the bank our money and don't use it, they give us interest, which is money on top of our money. The reason why the year before was they got hit, like the CSU got hit with a deficit, and then another within the last previous year they got hit with another unexpected deficit. So that money had a purpose that was mandated by council. So we cannot just shift and be like, okay, we're going to take the money from the Silk Fund and just pay ourselves and get ourselves out of deficit. We still owe an obligation to the Silk Fund. So what happened was there was agreement to take out the $250K in order so that we operate, because we don't want to be drowning in debt and the CSU can't die financially. So we took this money that we have, which is that has another purpose, but it would be gaining interest had we not taken it. And it would be making money on top of that money so that we could have more for a student center later. So the contract was made in a way that now every year we pay 50. It's like it was a 5-year loan. So it's like last year, starting this year, our executive year, we pay $50K to the Silk Fund on top of interest. So which is the $250K. I don't know what the interest rate is.
It was like 53 or 57 we're paying this year.
57?
53 or 57.
57. Okay, so.
Yeah, approximately.
Okay, so like if I took that, multiplied that by 5 and did some discounting math hoo-ha, I would get a percentage rate of what that interest would represent. So the problem here is that basically it's like, imagine you needed to take a loan out to pay your student debt, and then you go and you get some money from your grandma and you're like, I'm gonna go donate it to charity. I know I don't want to like insult anyone or like take any, but like you have other obligations. As much as it is you have now this extra money, in the grand scheme of things, you're still in debt. You're still not in the best situation. So especially when it comes to money that is for the students, like the students paid for this. So everyone who pays their fees, this is not our, like even though we're executives, even though we're counselors, we're trying to manage the students' money in their best interest. With the given situation, current stance of the union, given with the nature of the motion, I can't see it benefiting students, whether it's the union or whether it's the actual people that we're representing. So that's where the problem arises.
Did you have a follow-up?
Follow-up session, I wanted to amend the motion if it's possible.
I asked you down after.
Okay, so then put me back on, and I'll amend.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, Eduardo pretty much said everything I wanted to say.
Okay. Jared?
Okay.
Rad?
Yeah, on FinCom, we were talking about, so I guess my question is more to you. We were talking about something related to this line item, no? Like,
We were talking about donations specifically and possibly creating some regulations around it, I think. Did we have that discussion?
Okay, so it's not, doesn't have to do with the bus pass thing.
No, no.
Okay.
No, that was for Chris.
Okay, then I rescind, I think this is overtopped already.
Point of information.
Yep.
What was the deficit last year? Like, what was the budgeted deficit as of like the mid-mandate review? Do you remember? Well, do you remember like any numbers?
Yeah, I remember the numbers, but not for the mid-mandate. I just know the actuals I have from last year. There's still, I don't want to set this in stone specifically because there's still some revenue issues I have to figure out with Robert, but operational ended with around 40K. Clubs, that was a surprise. Essentially, we didn't think we'd end operational. When that motion passed in FinCom, it was under the impression of operational ending with actually a surplus. So the sentiment behind the motion is different than the reality that we have now. Clubs ended with about 100K deficit. That was planned in the sense that they knew it was going to happen because there was fiscal mismanagement throughout the year. Hojo and both Hojo and advocacy ended with deficits. The specifics I don't remember because it wasn't as phenomenal as 40 and 100. Those are the big one. And LIC obviously ended with a surplus because they always do.
Great, thank you. Victoria?
I wanted to amend the motion. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't essentially do it directly, but I just wanted to amend it to if the CSU has a surplus, we can donate it to CSU charities charities within the union. Is that possible? Do we have yes, I say.
Do you have, are there charities within the union? Can somebody clarify?
Yes. Well, like clubs, kind of, like clubs that do fundraising.
Because essentially what my amendment would be is that if we have a surplus, I don't think it's a bad idea to donate the money because realistically, it makes sense. If we owe a loan, obviously, we're not running in a surplus at that point. At that point, we're running in, we still owe money. So there's a lot of hands. So, okay, maybe I'll just rescind my whole amendment and we can all have a wonderful day.
Could you post a motion on the group page? Because it's really hard to have a discussion without seeing the actual motion.
I'll show the motion, both of the motion, because my motion is just to rescind.
Yeah, just send
to rescind.
Okay.
the
Okay.
paragraph.
Yeah, so the motion would just be a resolve that council rescinds the following motion, and then you would write that one. So we'll move on with the speakers list. Maha?
Thanks. So I just wanted to clarify something. It's kind of what you were asking, actually. So in total, I know that how much did the CSU go into deficit last year, and if we rescind that motion, how much will we make up in these donations?
$10,000. These checks amount to $10,000. It's one check. It's not one check that is for one specific charity. It's just the balance of all these hardware allowances and discretionary amounted to $10,000. Then it was divided by 7, and they all gave approximately $1,000 or $1,000 to $1,500 each.
So how much do we go into total into deficit, and then where is this? If this money is rescinded, where would it go to?
Right now it hasn't been sent, right? Right now it's just still in our accounts. Last year they ended with a deficit. That's done. It doesn't look good for the CSU generally, but on our day-to-day operations, it doesn't really affect us because we're just going to plan accordingly. It's more of a lesson for us going forward. It's not like if we write this check, we won't be able to have our next council meeting. It's just more, if we write this check, there's $10,000 that are coming out of our accounts, but we would still be able to survive. I think it's more like by principle of just they ended with a deficit. They thought they were ending with a surplus, and now these monies would be coming out of this year when we already knew they ended with a sticky situation. Yeah. I don't know if that answers, but it was kind of iffy.
And so basically, CSU, if I'm not mistaken, is a non-for-profit organization, right? So budgets are kind of as I was trying to tell Vic before, about finance, it's about predicting the future. So budgeting is a tool in order to kind of lay out and be okay, I approximate that this is gonna happen, and I forecast that I'm putting money that I don't have yet towards a certain goal. So I'm budgeting for it. last year's budget, so it's like all the money sits in like several bank accounts. There's not like a line, every line item on a budget doesn't have its own bank account. It's just that more so this is this executive or this committee or this is moving or controlling budgeting for this money. So for them to run, as an organization, when your NPO status is put into question, they look at your your budget that you had operating control of. Like, so all the different things that like the 1.8 mil that we had this year, that's our operating budget. They want to see how well did we use that money. So last year they ran a deficit. A deficit as an MPO is not the end of the world, but in terms of like financial practices, like you can't just be like, even if you do make money, because typically the reason you have an MPO is because you have like, you're not getting taxed on your money and you're not no one is, it's not a for-profit company. So if you're a for-profit company and you're making money and you have a surplus, it makes sense maybe you'd be like, okay, let's go donate to charity, let's go give money because it's for profit, it's for us. Whereas like we're an MPO. The money that, whether it's surplus or deficit, goes back into the next year in terms of like the different things or the different obligations that it has. And so it's like, this is all student money. So if you taking away a surplus from like let's say this year we run a surplus, which we have to make up for all the deficits that we've been running. So we've been losing money like these past 2 years. If we say that, okay, we made a surplus this year, it's kind of like you're trying to get a zero-sum game. So it's like we had what was 140K in total like loss last year. Ideally, we would run an 140K surplus just to make it back to even. But we can't, like you can't do that because you can't run a 140K surplus. The government's gonna be like, well, you're a company, I'm gonna tax you now. So we need to end in a surplus, meaning that we have to use the money wisely or try to save where we can. But it's not kind of like one of these games like, oh, we were under budget this year, we have a surplus, let's go give money to other people. No, it's just trying to manage the finances as properly and bring in external funding so that we can do more creative projects. It's one thing when you sit at FinCom to like be like mid-year review, it's like I thought that event was gonna cost me $5,000, but it really only cost me $2,500. That event's done. We should be like, okay, well, what do we do with this money that we budgeted? That's good practice. We still have a whole half a year to go and use the money properly to try to end up on budget. But you don't wait till May and be like, oh, well, I didn't spend $5,000. Let me go donate to the charity so that like you get like, no, it's like whatever you do this year, you have that financial obligation to make sure that the money is spent in the motion of how you budgeted it. So the problem is, at least for me and some of my other the problem is for the organization is that the money was kind of like rushly taken from one purpose to put another at a time where it's like that shouldn't even been a question. It was like your family's starving, you don't go and buy food for somebody else. You feed your family first.
Thank you. Just a reminder about the 2-minute limit as well. There's been a decent amount of going over. Chris?
Yeah, I just think giving to charity is a noble cause. And I really think like as a union, it's something we should be doing, but not, it's the way that you go about it that's important. When you hear the word operations budget, that's not where your money should be going to charity. We have all kinds of great funds. The CSU, like we have so many different budget lines, the external budget line, CAF, that are all dedicated to giving money to organizations so they could do good work. So like if we're gonna give money to charity, it should be coming out of those lines, not, our discretionary funds, not our hardware allowance. Those are, in fact, like the general manager, Robert, was telling me, those lines, we intentionally leave them the way they are, and in the corporate world this is true too, you intentionally leave it assuming there will be a surplus, because those are the lines where you're gonna have like, we're not surplus, but more money left over. Like those lines are designed to not be completely used and drained by the end of the year. That's where we're gonna have money to hope that we're not in a case in the future where we need to take out another loan from the Silk Fund, which I think is like a completely unacceptable financial practice in the future. John was in a tough spot, so I don't hold it against him, but like we need to make sure we do things this year so next year doesn't end up in that case.
Thank you. Eduardo?
I rescind.
Okay, Patrick?
Just to add another piece of the information to this is that the CSU has run a collective a cumulative surplus, a cumulative deficit over the past 5 years of $250,000 approximately. So we keep doing bad financial practices. I'm just going to point this out. The second thing is that this would actually reduce our deficit by 10 or 15,000. So instead of approximately a $40,000 deficit, we're going to be at a $25,000 deficit for the 2018-19 year. And I think that's important to highlight because we need to be as close to we need to break even. We need to be close to zero as much as possible for the CSU in future years, or to be at a positive, because the fact is we've been in a situation where we've been at a structural deficit and it has plagued us for years. It is not we can't afford to be doing these things. We can't be screwing around with students' money. While I agree that donating to charities is very noble, we also have to be aware of where we are financially and how this affects the student union's financials in future years too. So in that sense, I really hope you guys vote to rescind this. Anyways.
Yeah, so when we do rescind, what exactly happens to that budget line? Because again, we're not going to be spending it on donations.
Yeah.
What will it just stay that amount of money?
Can I just at the same time answer to Patrick actually? Okay, about the 40K you were talking about, the 40K deficit is actually what has been, we're under it. So even if we don't, whether this motion passes or not, and whether the donations are rescinded or not, it's not gonna impact that deficit because that deficit represents what actually came out of our pockets and we didn't have. So if this motion doesn't pass, then our deficit would be more along the 50K. But if this doesn't pass, it's still, anywho, if the donations aren't given, it's still 40K. I just want to put that clear. And okay, and what you're saying, can you repeat your question?
So right now, there's a budget line of, let's say, 15K-ish that is being spent on donations instead.
It's a miscellaneous. It's supposed to be miscellaneous expenses.
So it will be shifted to miscellaneous instead.
Yeah, technically the demand was, there's a pile of checkbooks, I don't know if you brought them essentially. These are all the charities you want to give money to. Please expense these to the budget line miscellaneous expenses. So it doesn't fall under hardware and doesn't fall under telephone and discretionary. It all falls, all that $10,000 will be a few expenses passed through this miscellaneous expenses.
Okay, so
we won't budget for it next year.
Okay, so my follow-up question.
I'll let you pass it around, sorry.
Thank you. My follow-up question in that case would be, so in other words, if we're just going to shift this to miscellaneous expenses, are we really saving anything, or are we just going to spend it on other 10, 15K miscellaneous stuff?
Next year? We never budget for miscellaneous.
This is not true information. So we're basically canceling out $15,000 from our deficit. What John and Margot did is they put it through miscellaneous expenses, which are not, that's a bad financial practice, and it should be only done in the worst circumstances. And it was hidden in the miscellaneous expenses. So this basically cancels out $15,000 of our deficit.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a speakers list of Marin, Victoria, Jared, Isaiah, Patrick. Go ahead.
If you look at the email that was sent to us, it details, it's all these budgets that have different budget codes and different budget lines, but because he's passing it kind of out of a different budget line, it's really weird. I think Desiree can explain it more because I don't get it, but it's different budget lines that are supposed to be surplus, but they would never end up being surplus because of the other deficits. That instead of taking out of the budget lines he motioned it, he's putting a new budget called miscellaneous that was put there, the budget line was put there, but he's putting the money in it to take it out of it.
Thank you. Victoria?
I wanted to call the question, but yeah. Okay. I'll make my statement later.
Okay, Jared? Is there any opposition to calling the question? Okay, so in that case, we'll move to a vote. So all those in favor of rescinding the motion as read by Marin, please raise your placards, or your hands, sorry. We don't have placards today. In favor of the motion to rescind.
so voting would mean you're saying yes,
To
rescind.
rescinding previous.
Okay.
Okay, so all those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, is that a hand raise? Sorry, Jared? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? 0. And abstentions? 1. Okay, so the motion carries with the requisite 2/3. There's still a speakers list if Jared, Isaiah, Patrick, Eduardo, Victoria. Okay, so there's nothing further on this point. We can move on to addition of a signing officer. And Desiree, this one was yours.
Yes, I don't know how bureaucratically I have to do this.
Whatever
but
it
essentially,
is, it would have to notwithstand standing regulation 127, because there's already 3
okay.
signing officers. 25, sorry, 125.
Should I write a motion at the same time, or?
That might be good. Like,
Yeah.
what are you trying, you're trying to
So
add?
essentially, yeah, I'm trying to add Victoria to the signing officers rotation for the last 2 weeks of July, because 2 people will be, yeah, because 2 people will be out of the country, so only Chris will be here, and I need an extra person to sign checks.
Okay.
That's essentially my sentiment. Just want to express it in the right way.
Okay, so basically it would be, be resolved that Victoria act as a signing officer from X date to X date, and that is it.
Okay.
Notwithstanding standing regulation 125.
Should I post it and then we discuss?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Can I call a question?
I mean, yeah, I don't think there's much discussion.
If anybody doesn't want me being signing officer, speak now or forever hold your peace for 2 weeks.
How
Thank
much is
you.
your signature worth?
Girl, you'll find out when I sign your paper.
Yes.
That's a good use of point of personal privilege. I respect it, honestly.
Oh, wait, don't throw it. Don't throw it. Don't. Thank you.
So we can call the question? Desiree's just writing the, because I don't know what the dates are.
Technically speaking, there has to be 2 minutes of
Yeah,
discussion, but
yeah, a bunch of other stuff.
You want to discuss how great
I
for 20 minutes?
really do not.
Ooh, are we gonna skip JMSB off?
Sorry,
I already had like 10
yeah,
minutes of
standing
that before
regulation
coming here,
125.
so I think that's enough.
Of compliments?
Though if there's no
Of, like,
discussion,
her
there doesn't
bragging.
have to be discussion.
What did I brag about?
Rightfully so.
What did I do?
No, just like showing it like you're the boss. And
I didn't even do that.
I think we might break a record at this rate.
Yeah, honestly, I'm so proud of you guys and us and like.
Reminder.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's posted.
Okay, so Desiree, you can read out the motion.
Be it resolved that Victoria Pese,
Pesh.
okay, be an additional signing officer for the last 2 weeks of July, notwithstanding standing regulations 125.
All right, do we have a second? Isaiah, do you want to motivate Desiree?
Please, I need someone, and it seems reliable, and that's, yeah.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, just asking like, when we say temporary, like, how long is it gonna be? Is there an end point?
Oh,
Like,
she
what's the
just-
plan?
she just
Yeah,
said
2
it.
weeks of the last 2 weeks of July.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, any more questions? Okay, so now we can move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Technically,
The
yeah.
candidate's contract.
Do we have quorum?
Somebody step up?
Yes.
Yeah, but as long as you don't call quorum, it's.
Yeah, but you shouldn't vote without quorum. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to the next point, and when she comes back, we'll vote.
Yeah, the next thing's a motion, the next 3 things are motions.
Well, let's get in that motion then.
Okay, can I move for a 10-minute recess?
No!
No.
I mean, you, like,
Wait till she comes
Can we
back.
just talk about the next motions without voting on it?
not really, like, not procedurally. We really need the quorum to be current.
It's like the moment that the quorum's not met, technically the meeting's either paused
Yeah,
or adjourned, so.
That's the problem.
If I see her in the
Paused and
hallway-
or adjourned, could
Like, does anyone want a 5-minute recess?
Probably we have a choice.
exactly it is.
Okay, we'll have a 5-minute recess and then hopefully get this done quickly through the end. 0 and abstentions. 1. Okay, so that carries. You will be a signing officer for the last 2 weeks of July. So the next thing is a motion to pass the RAWCC through the Silk Fund. And,
Being that there's a time constraint,
oh yeah.
I ask
Do you folks mind if we deal with the street closure first?
Yeah.
It's just a reversal of the last 2 points. Okay, so Eduardo, this motion's yours. I just need you to read the motion.
Oh, I don't have it.
No. Here. There you go.
Whereas the Concordia Student Union's orientation activities provide new and returning students with the opportunity to get involved in clubs, faculty associations, departmental associations, fee levy groups, and other campus groups, whereas the past orientation activities hosted by Concordia Student Union have used the closure of the McKay Street as a method to reach out to greater Concordia community, be it resolved that the Concordia Student Union's Council of Representatives approved the orientation team's plans to close down McKay Street between Sherbrooke and Maisonneuve for orientation activities, including but not limited to the Clubs Fair, September 4th, Community Street Fair, September 5th. These events will be overseen by Dora Maloney, who will be the authorized representative of the CSU in dealing with the street closure and the City of Montreal.
Okay, do you have a second? Jared, do you want to motivate?
Basically, we always close down the street because it's really fun to close down the street. And it makes it good for a good experience. And I need to talk to the City of Montreal, which means that you guys have to approve me to do that.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I just want to talk about the importance of the street closure. I first got involved with the CSU because of it. It was 2 years ago. There was a big clubs fair. I was the incoming president of the debate society, and I got a table, and it really it was my first contact with the internal coordinator at the time, and I think it was a wonderful thing, and unfortunately last year they weren't able to get a street closure because of logistical reasons. I'm very happy that Eduardo's bringing it back, and I think it's just an amazing thing for us to do, and it will help build a community.
All right, thank you. Is there any more discussion? Okay, so if not, we can move to a vote. So all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. 7, all those opposed, 0. So that is unanimous. If there's nothing further on street closure, we can move to motion to pass rock through silk. Desiree?
Yes, I will read it. So whereas the 2018-2019 Council passed a position mandating the CSU to support students living with addiction, whereas the new service ROC will provide supportive space for students in recovery to pursue wellness and build community, whereas as any other service offered by the CSU, the Recovery Center would be under the responsibility of the Academic and Advocacy Executive, to whom the ROC coordinator would provide monthly reports, whereas the proposed budget for ROC is of $28,588.60. Whereas, according to the Silk Fund bylaws, the annual interest accrued on the Silk Fund from the previous fiscal year may be used to grant funding to initiatives or organizations aligned with the CSU positions book, following the procedures outlined in the CSU standing regulations. Be it therefore resolved that the requested $28,588.60 for the new peer recovery service be entirely funded by Silk, provided that there are enough annual interest to cover both this project and all regular expenses.
Okay, here's a second. Jared, your motivation, Desiree?
Yes, so this ROC project currently is on pause. We were going to hire a coordinator, but there's still little delays concerning this, but essentially it's a new service that's going to be started on campus, focusing on students with addictions. So last year they had a proposal. We are trying to have it pass through Silk because Silk is usually used for, not usually, but often used for student initiatives that are starting off. So it's we're just gonna, hopefully it's a one-time thing, and for the future there are still some concerns as to how they will be getting the funding further along the way. But just making sure that they're well off for the first year, and it would take a lot of financial strain off their operational budget. This year being that it's $28,000, and yeah, I can answer questions also if you have questions about Silk Fund specifically and how usually it's used. You know, that was some talks we had during FinCom, and that's it for now.
Okay, is there any questions or comments?
So to clarify, like, we don't have a current coordinator yet.
No, exactly. The person hasn't been hired yet.
So who would be in charge of hiring the appointments committee, or?
It was Eduardo and Patrick are on the appointments.
Do you mind if I explain something?
Okay, there's information.
Yeah, so when it comes to hiring employees, the council doesn't partake in the process. It's a collaboration between the executives and the employees union, which is QP. So we send 2 representatives, so it could be me and Patrick, it could be Eduardo and Desiree, and they send 2 representatives. It could be any 2 currently standing employees of the CSU. It could be people from the Advocacy Center, from Hojo. It could be from our office as well. They decide on their own. And then we get together and we do the hiring. And if there's 2 people who disagree, so 2 employees who disagree, or 2 of us who disagree, we have to find a new candidate. So that's the process that's currently outlined by the collective agreement.
Okay, thank you. Lee?
You mentioned that ROC is currently on hold. Why is that?
Well,
What's
it's
going
really
on?
just for hiring the coordinator,
Okay.
essentially. We have a meeting next week
Okay.
to keep it going.
Okay.
It's just I wanted to say right now there's no tangible,
There's no.
tangible things that I can present to talk
Okay.
about ROC.
I
But there's a lot of documentation that was presented to council last year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I can, sorry, I just
No, no,
added,
no, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, I thought you were
I
done.
can provide it if necessary also, yeah.
Thank you. Isaiah?
Yeah, and even to the point where it's like, similar to some of the other things, ROC was kind of like introduced in the later half of the mandate. So before we introduce a whole nother service, while we are still based off last year in deficit, we want to make sure that like it's ironed out and it's not like we're just, okay, here's another service. Because all our services have been historically here, and like they provide, like they had to go through, like it wasn't just like overnight that Hojo was built. It wasn't just overnight. So we don't want to rush something like this and then be like, whoa. So it's like we need to like find the right person, which takes time, and then also like find the right way to actually do it. And if we get it passed through the Silk Fund, it then it limits the risk of running like a loss, a deficit.
Thank you. Victoria?
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know if I understood this correctly, but you said the money's coming from a specific account, but if the money isn't in the account, like we just don't provide the service? Like
Oh, no.
No? Okay.
I don't know what I said with that.
Because that's what I had understood, and I was like, I must be crazy, so I just wanted to make sure it was wrong, but like, okay.
Yeah, the money would be coming from the interest accrued from the Silk Fund. That's usually, it's $9 million that we have invested in different portfolios.
Let's say, because we did take money out, so obviously our interest is gonna be lower. If we don't cover all our initial costs and we don't have money to fund, what happens?
Well, it's the Silk Fund, people can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is they go by just, we fund projects if we want when they're presented to us and if they're mandated by council. Last year, they funded 12 projects throughout the year, and they had around $400,000 of interest, and they pretty much spent it all on all these different projects. It was FASA renovations with $70K. There was some special food projects, sustainable food projects on campus that were lower $10K, so it's more of, they're presented something and they decide whether or not they're gonna say yes or no. But these things that happened last year, like I'm guessing FASA is gonna ask again for $70K, right? But maybe the food project would come again, so it's just always a launching pad for new initiatives. Or there's also a lot of legal stuff that happened last year that probably won't happen again this year. So it's just, yeah.
Thank you.
That answer, yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, so just to give some financial information, which Des did all the research for, so I cannot take any credit for it. There's about 9 million in assets in the Silk Fund. There's about 400K in interest garnered on that 9 million of assets every year. However, the majority of that 400K was spent last year. And the process roughly, again, as Desiree found out, is that they tender, you tender your project offer, whatever you have in mind, and they approve a certain number of projects that are, good for approval, and that amounts to that 400K of interest. So really our decision right here is that we're gonna be cutting a little bit away from that opportunity of renovation projects. So that's the decision to make, is do we fund ROC for the first year through Silk and cut out a little bit of that opportunity for renovations, which, personal opinion, I think is worthwhile. But that's the situation.
Thank you. Isaiah?
And the way that the Silk Fund operates, it's something separate from our budget, so it doesn't really affect whether we're in deficit and surplus. So if you decline it, then that means the CSU will have to do it out of operations, putting more financial constraint and causing a more higher likely that we'll run a deficit because, or we'll have to cut like somewhere else in the operations. Versus the Silk Fund, this is what it's kind of like there for. And so we would be able to introduce the service, get it off the ground, run it, and then worry about how is it gonna secure funding or where is the money coming from a bit later. But we could still offer the service, whereas the other one, it would have to be like, okay, what are we doing now? How are we gonna make room for it? Versus the Silk Fund is kind of there for these specific projects, not necessarily to bail, like to take for us to take and put into operations. It's more so for these type of projects that students or the union want to bring to students.
Thank you. Lee?
I move to call the question.
Okay, do we have a second to call the question?
A second.
Okay, so there's clearly no opposition. All right, so we will move to a vote. So all those in favor of the motion as read by Desiree, please raise your hands. 6. All those opposed? 0. And any abstentions? 0. All right, so that carries. Yes, Jared? Okay, I'll take it.